Let's talk about the thing that has remained constant in the appraisal business for the last 30 or 40 years thing. It's change. No matter whether we like it or not, the main thing that is consistent in the appraisal industry is change. Whether it's appraisal modernization or new forms, quality, whatever, appraisers are always the target, it seems, of things that need to change. It's never the banking system or the real estate industry. It seems to fall on the appraisal industry. So change is something appraisers have become very used to. The one thing that has been constant though, whether it's today or whether it's 1975, is the way appraisers select comparable sales. Has that changed? Nope, it still comes down to the same thing, and we'll go over those later, the things that make a comp actually. But this process, at least for appraisers, it's not changed in all the years I can remember. But in the real estate industry, it actually has changed. How so? Well, what's happened is the automated valuation system has crept into the real estate industry, and the way real estate agents look at getting comparable sales, it's about most of the time drawing a circle on a map and coming up with 40, 50, however many comps, every sale that's come up in that area, and coming up with a price per square foot. They take that price per square foot and they apply it to the subject square footage, which they take from tax records, and we know that's not correct. So that's a problem. But as I did one example just to kind of give me an idea of what the difference was. In this sale, it was about a $350,000 sale. And on my appraisal, I did it just like I do every appraisal. I think I used 5 comps in this one. So I gave it a little extra time on there, but I had good sales, came up with my valuation. Then I used a realtor tool called RPR, Realtor Property Resource. And that is a great tool for making a beautiful looking presentation. It does a good job. But what it did on this particular house, it had over 50 comparable sales. It called them comparable sales, but there were 50 sales. There was, square footage went from, I think, 1,019 up to over 4,300. The year built went from 1919 to new construction. Even the price range was like 108,000 up to 1,458,000. And to me, those things, they're not comparable sales. It's more about proximity, not comparability. Now, think about that now. It's proximity, not comparability. And that's a big problem, guys. We're using sales with that much variation, and it's coming up with this massive, variation and bringing it down to that price per square foot formula. And that is so dangerous, guys. It's just, in the end, it came up with a difference of $89,000. Based on their price per square foot and their 50 comparables against my 5, we were $89,000 apart. Now, that is a big problem. That is not, to me, it's the opposite of consumer protection. That is a really dangerous thing, and consumers are trusting these things. And whether, it's Fannie Mae, realtors, whoever it is, we're kind of being pushed into these things. And, and I won't say names, but these big sites, are trusting automated valuations and pushing them more and more. And these things are a very dangerous thing. And it all comes down to the thing we're talking about today, the way we select comparable sales. They've got to be comparable, and we've got to get away from this thing about more is better. In this case, A living, breathing human appraiser is going to come up with the best comparable sales. And for consumer protection, that's what needs to happen. Having a computer select 50 or 60 or however many sales, that is not comparable sales. It doesn't give you a true picture of a home's value. It's not like what I always like to call apples to apples. You know, that's the way real estate should be compared, is apples to apples. And we've got to get back to that and understand that selecting the right comparable sales is one of the biggest keys to getting rid of bias, to consumer protection. You know, it is just, any way you look at it, it is good for the real estate and appraisal industries, and it's something we've got to get back to.